There's a fine line between high expectations and unrealistic expectations in professional sports. And for a team like the Sacramento Kings, coming off the great season that they had last year, sometimes that line gets blurred even more. Well, on today's show, we're going to look at realistic and unrealistic expectations for the Kings next season. It's all right here on Locked On Kings.
You are Locked On Kings, your daily Sacramento Kings podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And now, ladies and gentlemen, it is that time for another episode of Locked On Kings.
Hello and welcome into Locked On Kings, your podcast hub for Sacramento Kings coverage all off-season long. My name is Matt George. I have the privilege of being your host here. I'm a Sacramento sports reporter and producer for ABC 10 News. And today's episode of the Locked On Kings podcast is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook, the official sportsbook of Locked On. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn to get started. Realistic and unrealistic expectations for the Sacramento Kings. Some you're going to agree with, some you're going to disagree with. Now, this, of course, is from my perspective as someone who does have very high expectations for the Kings. A lot of these expectations are founded and based off of expectations that the Sacramento Kings have publicly and privately put upon themselves. So when we're trying to toe this line between realistic and unrealistic, ultimately, we're looking at what the Sacramento Kings can accomplish and separating that from what the Sacramento Kings will accomplish. Because even if a expectation is unrealistic, that doesn't mean it's impossible. And even if an expectation is realistic, that doesn't mean that the Sacramento Kings won't achieve it, right? That's essentially underachieving. So the purpose of this is for me to share kind of where I'm at with this Kings team going into next season and what I expect from them, and to kind of gauge where myself or you as Sacramento Kings fans or media members or even like the national perspective, like where they aren't asking enough of the Kings and where they're asking for too much or expecting too much from a team that did just return to the playoffs. And sure, they're coming off a season where they were a third seed last year, but ultimately, I mean, they can't always skip 2-3 rungs up that ladder to a championship contender like they were able to do last season. Sometimes you just have to slowly build and work your way through. And I know I've said it a million times, but I'm going to continue to harp on it. Mike Brown, Kings head coach Mike Brown, has talked a lot about it's easy to get from bad to good. It's hard to get from good to great. So this is where the grind maybe with this Kings development is truly going to kick in. So let's go through and we're going to go back and forth with some realistic and unrealistic expectations for the Sacramento Kings, many of which are going to play off of one another and have to do with one another. And my first realistic expectation is something that I've been consistent with all offseason long, something that was established not by me, but established by the Sacramento Kings themselves in their post-season press conferences or end-of-season press conferences earlier on this year after they were eliminated from the playoffs. That realistic expectation is the Sacramento Kings being a 50-win team. Now, on paper, a 2-win improvement doesn't seem like that big of an expectation, right? Yeah, the Sacramento Kings are more than capable of winning 2 or more games. So on the surface, you're like, okay, that's not that massive of an ask for the Kings. But with a combination of other teams in the Western Conference getting better in theory, the Sacramento Kings not making massive improvements this offseason, I do think they got better. And I think of a lot of the major improvement for the Kings is going to come internally with the core that's already here. Maybe they improve even more than even I, eternal Sacramento Kings optimist, will expect. But there are a lot of factors. Maybe it's health. They're not as lucky health-wise as they were last season, although I think they put themselves in a good position roster-wise and depth-wise to be able to handle that. Winning 50 games, period, is not an easy thing. And the reason why that number is brought up is because typically, and this was pointed out by, I always get it mixed up if it was Mike Brown or pointing this out or Monty McNair. I believe it was Kings GM Monty McNair that pointed this out. Typically, teams who are true championship contenders, teams who are in that championship window, are typically teams that are winning 50 plus games during the regular season. So that is a goal. That is a line that the Sacramento Kings want to hold themselves to. And again, going from 48 wins last season to 50 wins is not that big of a jump. I'm not saying the Kings are going to accomplish this. And I'm not saying it's a failure if the Kings don't accomplish this. Like, depending upon how the season shakes up too, the Kings could win 48 games again, and maybe that's a 5th seed this year. Are we calling that a failure for the Kings? Or are we calling that a step backwards? Well, of course, context is important, but I don't know too many Kings fans who, after dealing with 16 seasons of hell and losing, are going to turn their noses up at being a 48-win team back-to-back. Maybe they'll question how much this team is really improving. But at that point, we'll see how they fare in the playoffs, and that's where we'll really engage the year-over-year improvement. So a 50-win expectation for the Kings is realistic. It's something that they're placing upon themselves. Does it mean that if they don't meet it, that they're a failure and that they should be held accountable or they should be disappointed? Again, without the proper context in this conversation, I would say no. I would say that's not necessarily fair in that sense. But like, to me, an unrealistic expectation in this sense is for the Sacramento Kings to be considered or held to the standard of true title contenders this season. Now, again, an unrealistic expectation doesn't mean it's impossible. Can the Kings contend for a championship as early as this season? Absolutely, they can. If they play the style of basketball that they played last year, especially on the offensive end, if they improve over what they were able to do last season, yes, I do believe the Sacramento Kings are a team capable of making a deep enough run to truly contend for an NBA championship. Is that a lot to ask of this team? You're damn right it is. Absolutely it is. That's why, to me, it's an unrealistic expectation. We're not expecting the Kings to contend for a championship or win a championship this year the same way we might be expecting the Phoenix Suns to, or the Milwaukee Bucks to, or the Denver Nuggets to. Those are teams that are expected to be there. Now, like Giannis Antetokounmpo pointed out, that doesn't mean that if they don't get there, that it's a failure for them. Because again, context is important and there's only one winner every single year. But we expect those teams to be in that championship conversation. The Kings aren't there yet. They're capable of being there, but we shouldn't expect them to be there. Again, fine line between unrealistic and realistic expectations. And really also there's a fine line between expectation and possibility. Let's talk about another realistic expectation. The Kings will win their group in the NBA play-in tournament. I think this is an absolutely realistic expectation. Absolutely, 100%. And I think the Sacramento Kings got one of the better groups in the Western Conference, truth be told. Now, I think the Oklahoma City Thunder are going to be a good team, much better than they were last season. I think the Golden State Warriors, of course, are going to be a really, really good basketball team. I think the San Antonio Spurs are going to be a watchable basketball team because of Victor Wembanyama. They're coached by Greg Popovich, so they're not going to be awful, dreadful, terrible, easy pickings every single night, but they're going to be a bottom feeder team in the Western Conference, in my opinion, maybe even in the entire NBA. Their focus is on developing Victor Wembanyama and bringing him along. I don't think, as good as he is and sensational as he is, I don't think he's the type of player that overnight is going to turn the Spurs franchise around. Could be wrong, but I don't expect that. That's an unrealistic expectation for the San Antonio Spurs. But the reason why I'm very confident in the Kings' ability, not only their potential to win the group, but an expectation that they will win the group, is because, again, these groups are regular season games. That's what they are. If the Sacramento Kings are going to be a 50-win team, they're obviously taking the floor every single night trying to win. The Sacramento Kings, I believe, are taking the regular season more seriously than maybe a team like the Phoenix Suns or Los Angeles Lakers are. Because those are teams, maybe even the Golden State Warriors, those are teams that, would they like home court advantage in the playoffs? Sure. Is seeding important in that sense? Absolutely. But those teams know that if they get to the party, they're more than capable of making a run at the right time. To many of those teams, especially teams that are older and dealing with health issues over the course of the season, like the Lakers, for example, who knows if Anthony Davis is going to stay healthy? LeBron James is only getting older, although to expect him to break down anytime soon is just betting against the field every single year. Until we see it, I won't believe it. But like, those are teams that they want to get there. And once they get there, or once they get towards the end of the season, that's where they really start to ramp up and get into that kind of championship mode, right? The Kings would like to be in that position, but I think seeding and home court advantage is going to matter significantly more to a team like the Kings than it is to one of those teams like the Lakers or Warriors or Phoenix Suns, right? So winning every regular season game that you can, of course, every team takes the floor every night wanting to win. That's not what I'm saying, but I'm saying like the Kings are taking every single regular season game very, very seriously. And because these tournament group games are regular season games that just matter twofold now instead of just onefold, to expect the Kings to win all 4 of those games and make it, 3? Is it 3 or is it 4? However many it is. No, it's 4 because there's 2 at home, 2 in the way. For the Kings to win all 4 of those games and make it out of their group, like, that is a very, very realistic expectation for the Sacramento Kings, in my opinion. Now, an unrealistic expectation is for the Kings to win the Western Conference. Again, it's possible. It's an unrealistic expectation because of teams like Denver, because of teams like Phoenix. With how good just the Pacific Division alone is, right? You might even say it's an unrealistic expectation for the Kings to repeat as Pacific Division champions. I don't know if I didn't have that included on my list, but maybe that's one that you can think of. And if you have realistic or unrealistic expectations that you want to share with me or add to this list, feel free to do so at MattGeorgeSack on Twitter. Email me, mattgeorgesports@gmail.com. Or if you're watching on YouTube, leave your thoughts in the YouTube comment section down below. But I think the Kings winning the West is a possibility, but an unrealistic expectation. Here's a realistic expectation, even if it's asking a lot of a second-year player. It's a realistic expectation for Keegan Murray to make a big leap this season. The Kings are needing that and expecting that out of him. Now, what does a big leap look like? That's subjective, right? That could be as a scorer. That could be as a rebounder and playmaker, as a defender. Like, there are different areas where Keegan Murray can get better and make a leap. And the reality is Keegan is hopefully going to get better at all facets of it, but he'll especially step up as a shot creator, someone who can score and be a go-to scorer. You can put the ball in his hands and you know that he can get you a bucket time to time. When Fox can't be that guy, Fox is out of the game, or maybe Fox is facing a double team or whatever. Like, teams are expecting a game planning for Darren Fox, so you give the ball to Keegan Murray and he's the one that hits that big shot for you. Like, that's a realistic expectation for Keegan to turn into that guy. I don't think it's a realistic expectation for Keegan Murray to be an all-star. Like, the amount of things that have to go right, not just for Keegan, but for the Kings, for Keegan to be an all-star. Because the reality is, if Keegan Murray is making the all-star team, that means that the Kings are likely having 3 all-stars. And if the Kings are having 3 all-stars, that means the Sacramento Kings are like the number 1 team in the Western Conference, maybe the number 1 team in the NBA by the time we get to that NBA All-Star voting, end of voting, and NBA All-Star time period. Like, the Kings have to be close to, if not the best team in the NBA at that point in time for them to get 3 All-Stars. Now, maybe there's a scenario where Fox and Murray make it and Domantas Sabonis doesn't, but positionally, I think that's unlikely. I think there's an easier route positionally for Sabonis to make an all-star team as a center, as a big, than there are for Fox and Murray to make it as point guards and forwards. That's just the reality of the situation with the amount of talented players at those positions in the Western and Eastern conferences. So it's an unrealistic expectation for Keegan to be an all-star. Is he capable of becoming one? Absolutely. The Sacramento Kings certainly think so. As early as next season, maybe we're jumping the gun a little bit. How about, let's talk about defensively for the Sacramento Kings. I think it's absolutely a realistic expectation that the Kings defensively are a top half of the league team. Talking top 15. Top 15 defensive team. Are they capable of doing it for an entire season? Yes. We saw them do it in the playoffs. Now, I think we know the playoffs are officiated a little bit differently. The physicality is different and things are let go. And the Kings played really, really well on the defensive end of the ball in the playoffs. That was encouraging. Offensively, they dropped off significantly in the playoffs. Now, how much of that was because of the defense that the Golden State Warriors were playing, and how much of that was because of the energy that the Kings were exerting on the defensive end and not having as much on the offensive end? I mean, you can make arguments for either. Only time will tell, really. But for a full 82-game season, for a team that's as offensively gifted as the Kings are, with big defensive question marks, still expecting them to be a top half of the league defensive team, top 15. I don't think that's an unrealistic expectation at all for the Kings. Now, top 10, yeah, the difference of 5 spots, 15 to 10, that's a big leap. That's a big difference. So maybe top 10 is unrealistic, but top 15, top half of the league defensively for the Kings, I think is very realistic. I've said it before and I'll say it again. With how good the Kings offense is, if the Kings defense is just middle of the pack, the Sacramento Kings are a ridiculously good basketball team. Ridiculously good, especially during the regular season. I have more realistic and unrealistic expectations to get through. This list is really only getting started. And again, if you want to add to this list and send your own, feel free to do so. But right now, I want to tell you a little bit more about the sponsor. I told you at the top of the show, I'm talking about FanDuel. Get ready for the NFL season with incredible offers from FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers can bet $5 and you'll get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. So make a $5 bet on who you think the Super Bowl champion is going to be, or make a $5 bet on not this Thursday, but next Thursday's NFL regular season opener. It could be a prop bet. It could be a money line bet. It could be whatever it may be. Bet $5. You're getting $200 in bonus bets right away. So even if you lose that bet, even if you lose that $5, here's $200 for you to tactically use, or go all in on one thing if you're confident in it, and make that money back and then some. It's truly an unbelievable deal. Plus, all customers who bet $5 will get $100 off NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. That's an incredible deal. Now is the best time to join FanDuel. The app is easy to use, and you can bet on anything from spreads to player props and more. So visit FanDuel.com/locked-on and kick off the NFL season with an offer you won't want to miss. FanDuel, official partner of the NFL. Continuing with our realistic and unrealistic expectations for the Kings this season, let's talk about Darren Fox, right? The amazing leap that Darren Fox made last season, winning clutch player of the year, the jump that he made defensively. It's hard to ask for a lot more from Fox than what he gave last season. But Mike Brown, specifically at the end of the season, in his end of season press conference, talked about how De'Aaron is capable of giving more and how he still wants more and expects more out of De'Aaron, especially as a defender. And Mike Brown talked specifically a lot about, on both sides of the ball, how De'Aaron can be that guy. The true greats in the NBA are guys that can bring it the same way and be at that elite level for close to 48 minutes or however much they end up playing every single night that they step on the floor. Like, they are capable of being that guy. That doesn't mean they're always going to have great games, but those elite stars who Mike Brown thinks De'Aaron can be one of those guys, to be consistently present and capable of going off at every single and any single moment, not just locking in and becoming the great fourth quarter scorer and fourth quarter defender that we saw last season. That was an excellent jump for De'Aaron. If that can continue for the Kings next year with his clutch scoring, the Kings, of course, are in really, really good shape. But can he be fourth quarter Fox for the second half? Can he be the fourth quarter Fox for the second, third, and fourth quarters? Can he be fourth quarter Fox for the entire game? So those are the kind of things that Mike Brown is challenging from De'Aaron Fox. But what's a realistic expectation? I think De'Aaron making another jump to All-NBA second team, I think that's a realistic expectation for De'Aaron. That's another step forward. Now, we're talking top 10 players in the league. And again, as a point guard, we're talking top 4 guards in the league. That's an incredibly difficult accomplishment. But I think it's realistic that we can expect De'Aaron Fox to be in that conversation. Maybe he gets beat out by a guy who simply can't be denied. Steph Curry has another phenomenal season. Luka Doncic is in that conversation, right? Earlier in the offseason, we talked about point guard ratings, and I shared with you how I believe that De'Aaron Fox is a top 5 point guard in the NBA, right? But does he have a better season than Shai Gilgeous-Alexander? I think he's capable of doing that. Absolutely. Can De'Aaron Fox have a better season than Ja Morant? Certainly. Can he have a better season than Dame Lillard? I think so. So why can't De'Aaron Fox be in that All-NBA second team or better conversation? Now, De'Aaron Fox winning MVP, very possible. Would love to see it. And I mean, let's talk about really quickly, like what would have to happen for De'Aaron Fox to win MVP? I mean, we're talking he's averaging 30 plus points per game, right? That has to be an expectation of Fox. He's averaging 30 plus points per game. He's also probably in the conversation for all defense, like making an all defensive team, even if it's third team or second team or whatever it is, not the main team. But regardless, like we're talking all NBA defense probably if he's an MVP caliber player with that 30 plus points per game. The Sacramento Kings are absolutely the number one seed in the Western Conference. And the Sacramento Kings are probably making a deep playoff run. Even if it's a regular season award, we know that to some extent, how they perform in the playoffs also slightly impacts what the votes that Fox gets. So a lot has to happen and a lot has to go right for De'Aaron Fox to win MVP. It's possible because De'Aaron Fox is a good enough player. I would never put money on it, and I would certainly never expect it. I'm absolutely rooting for it, but I would never expect it. And I don't know. I also don't know, truthfully, like, I don't think De'Aaron has to do all that for the Sacramento Kings to get to where they want to go. There's only one basketball, right? Guys have to share it. And we know how much the Sacramento Kings like to move the ball. Do the Kings need De'Aaron to score 30 or sometimes 40 points to win a basketball game? Or are they going to need to lean on amazing performances like that, especially in the playoffs at times? Sure. But the Kings don't need De'Aaron Fox to average 30 or more points per night. Is he capable of doing it? Yes. Yes. If De'Aaron Fox set his mind to it, he could average 30 to 35 points a night, I don't think, without working that hard. I truly don't. I know De'Aaron's capable of that. But De'Aaron doesn't have to do that for the Sacramento Kings to be effective. And I would argue, and maybe he would argue, that if he were to look to do that, that might hinder instead of help at times what the Sacramento Kings do on the offensive side of the ball. So it's unrealistic, of course, to expect De'Aaron Fox to win an MVP. Let's talk about another Kings player, another polarizing Kings player, even though we have never seen him play a game for the Sacramento Kings, Sasha Vezenkov. Is it a realistic expectation for Sasha Vezenkov to become a starter this season? I don't think so. I think it's absolutely a realistic expectation for Sasha Vezenkov to be a super impactful rotational player. In fact, I think the Kings expect that of him right away. Like, come in and fit perfectly with what the Kings try and do. Offensively, I know there are questions on defense, but offensively, like, he should be a absolutely picture perfect fit for the Kings. That perimeter poacher, the quick catch and shoot, can also cut off the ball, can play through guys like Domantas Sabonis or really anybody. Like, Sasha Vezenkov should absolutely immediately be a very important rotational piece. Not necessarily a sixth man, because that's reserved for Malik Monk, but seventh, eighth man who's coming in and you're like, okay, Sasha Vezenkov is in the game. Look out, sharpshooter on the floor. He's the guy that every time he touches the ball, you hear an entire bench yell, shooter! Like, that should be who Sasha Vezenkov is right away for the Kings. Right away. That's a realistic expectation. But for Vezenkov to become a starter, to expect Vezenkov to become a starter, again, he's probably capable of becoming one. He would have to replace Harrison Barnes, which is not impossible, but I wouldn't call it probable. To expect him to become a starter, and more importantly, to expect him, like I've heard people discuss, to expect him to be in the Rookie of the Year conversation, I think that's unrealistic. I think that's a big ask. I don't think Sasha Vezenkov is going to get the opportunity and the touches compared to Scoot, compared to Victor Wembanyama. Even Chet Holmgren in Oklahoma City. Yeah, this is technically his second season in the league, but he was hurt all last year, didn't play. So this is his rookie season by those standards. Like, those three guys are going to get massive opportunities and touches compared to what Vezenkov is going to get. It's kind of going to be the same thing to a lesser scale of what we were talking about for the Keegan Murray Rookie of the Year sweepstakes. Like, Keegan was an important starter on a playoff team. There was no rookie last season that contributed to winning better than Keegan Murray did. But Keegan had no shot of beating Paolo Banchero for Rookie of the Year because of the amazing numbers that Banchero was putting up on a bad team. But regardless, it's an individual award. So Sasha Vezenkov winning Rookie of the Year, I think, is not only an unrealistic expectation, I think it's very, very, very unlikely, although I have seen people discuss it. That would be pretty amazing if he did. I think it's a realistic expectation for Mike Brown to win Coach of the Year again. Now, well, maybe now that I think about it, now that I say that out loud, maybe not. Because, again, expectation and capability are two very different things. I might be like, this might be a lesson for me in real time. Because what does Mike Brown have to do for the Kings to win Coach Brown of the Year? What are the to win Coach of the Year again? What do the Sacramento Kings have to do? They have to improve upon what they did last year. They can't just be the exact same team. They're not catching anybody by surprise anymore. For Mike Brown to win Coach of the Year, the Kings have to make an even bigger jump than they did last season. They have to be a top seed in the West. They have to be a 55 probably plus win team. That's what Mike Brown has to do. That's what the Kings have to do for Mike Brown to repeat. So expectation, no, it's not realistic. Possibility, yeah, that is realistic. It's also unrealistic, in my opinion, for Monte McNair to make another big splash at the trade deadline. I think Monty's made it very clear that not only is he committed to this core at this point in time, I think he's also made it very clear that he is not a knee-jerk reaction type of guy. Now, there are scenarios where I could see him making another swing. And maybe an opportunity falls into his lap because we know how much Monty is so open about wanting to remain flexible. Maybe the possibility of a player becoming available and the Kings using Harrison Barnes in his affordable contract that they just signed, or a combination of players to go out and get that guy. Maybe that, depending upon the name, that could constitute a big splash move. But I'm talking about a move to the level of the Tyrese Halliburton, Domantas Sabonis, like massive piece for massive piece type swap. I don't think anything like that is coming, and I don't think it would be realistic to expect that. But I do think, final one here, it is realistic for the Sacramento Kings to be up there, if not at the top of having the best home record in the NBA. We know how incredible the Kings' home court advantage is. We know, I mean, last season was a lot of consecutive sellouts. And last season was an incredible ride. Like, I'm telling you now, and I can already tell, like, Kings games, whether it's a Wednesday night against Charlotte or a Friday night home opener against the Golden State Warriors, Kings tickets are going to be a hot commodity this season. And the Sacramento Kings, Vivek Ranadive, they're probably very excited about that because they're still trying to recoup some of the money that they and the NBA lost period during COVID. Good on them. I'll just say this. We know that every single night the Golden One Center is going to be rocking. We know that. If the Sacramento Kings can take advantage of that energy, take advantage of that home court advantage, and play their best basketball on their home floor and become that team like I've discussed in the past, where regardless of who they're playing, even if they're playing a team that is better than them, the expectation is they win on their home floor every single night. I think it's realistic to expect the Kings to have one of the best, if not the best, home record in the NBA this season. All right, before we wrap up, I wanted to play this audio for you really quick and discuss this, because this clip has a lot of NBA players, including Darren Fox, reacting to it. This is USA track and field star Noah Lyles. You might have heard this or might have seen this. He commented about the NBA championship not being the world championship compared to track and field stars competing against the best of the world, the best of other countries, Olympics, things of that nature. I'm going to play for you the clip really quick, and then we'll discuss it really briefly.
World champion of what? The United States? You know, the thing that hurts me the most is that I have to watch the NBA Finals, and they have world champion on their head. World champion of what? The United States? Don't get me wrong. I love the U.S. at times, but that ain't the world. That is not the world. We are the world. We have almost every country out here fighting, thriving, putting on their flag to show that they are represented. There ain't no flags in the NBA.
Now, I understand what Noah is saying, and also I think I don't know much about the guy. Like, I've been doing a little more research just after this clip came out and kind of trying to follow him. I'm not a track and field guy. I'm not even an Olympic guy. Like, I think when the Olympics are on, it's like, oh, cool, the Olympics, and I'll pay attention a little bit. And of course, rah, USA, win as many golds as possible. But I'm not like invested into Team USA anything other than like Team USA men's and women's soccer. And then when I guess Team USA basketball plays, but even then, like, I'm not super invested in it. I get what he's saying. And I think also, like, you could hear his personality and see his personality come out in that clip a little bit. I get what he's saying. And technically, yes, the NBA United States League is not the world, but the reality is it's the greatest basketball league on the planet. Not even close. As great as European basketball, and as much as the game is growing in Europe and other countries, and as good as it is in other countries, don't get me wrong, it's not on the NBA's level. That's why the best European players in the world are coming over to the United States, and to their credit, are dominating in the United States. The best players in the NBA are European players. Nikola Jokic, Joel Embiid, Giannis Antetokounmpo, Luka Doncic. Arguably the top 4 players in the NBA right now, all not from the United States, or all not USA players. But they're coming to the United States to play in the NBA, the best basketball league in the world. So yes, I do consider an NBA championship to be the world championships. Now, FIBA does have their World Cup, and there is Team USA Olympic basketball. And for the most part, Team USA dominates those. At times, have they lost? Yes. Have other teams won? Sure. But I don't think anybody anywhere is going to suggest that another league is better than the NBA in terms of basketball. And I don't think if you were to make like a basketball champions league, right? Let's say now the Denver Nuggets get to go and play the champions from Eurobasket and champions from, I don't know, other leagues in like in Latin countries or like in Asia. I have no idea. Like, I don't know enough about international basketball, but say you, all these different leagues, you take the champion from all of them and put them in this champions league. Like, the Denver Nuggets are running through everybody. They are. They're the best team by far. So I get what he's saying. I think some of the reaction from NBA players has been a little silly. Like, it's not that big of a deal. You don't have to take it to heart as much as possible. And I think like De'Aaron's response to it was like, why does he care so much? And he's kind of like that's De'Aaron's personality. He's just kind of like, what the hell? Like, trust me, I've been on the side of De'Aaron reactions where he has disagreed with something that I've said. But here's the thing about Fox. I can't speak for other people, but I can speak about this for Fox. Fox doesn't care that much. Like, he responds to it because he disagrees with it. And he does that on social media, just like all of us respond to things that we disagree with if we want to. Like, just because he's a professional athlete, a public figure, doesn't mean he can't speak out against things that he disagrees with, even if they're as minor as a basketball take that I had that he disagreed with, right? But De'Aaron's not like going to Twitter to find what I've said or to find what this Team USA track and field runner has said, or anybody, and to go like, I'm about to rip these people to shreds. Like, that's not who De'Aaron is. And I think for the most part, a lot of these NBA players are just like, what the hell's bro talking about? Like, we're the best league in the NBA, period. Or sorry, we're the best league in basketball in the world, period. So I disagree with it. I think it's kind of a fun, silly thing in the end. I don't think it's worth like looking at Noah Lyles and going, oh my God, this idiot, what the hell is he talking? He does, just stay in your lane, stick to track and field. You don't know anything about basketball. I think it's a fun off-season conversation that shouldn't be blown out of proportion, but because it's a talking point right now, I figured we'd sneak it in here at the end of the podcast. We're almost through August, everybody. We're almost through. We get to September. We still have a few weeks until training camp begins, but there are going to be a lot of storylines, of course, around training camp to keep an eye out for. I'm working on getting, I have like good guests that are interested in coming on, that we have topics and things that we're going to discuss, everything from like expectations for Colby Jones. I want to discuss, I'm still going to do like that ultimate expansion draft with Frankie Cardicelli and Brendan Nunez. That's coming hopefully at the end of this week. I am also going to be doing this week. I said I was going to do it last week, but it was my son's birthday, so I ended up not being able to do it. But I want to start doing live Fridays, where I'm doing a live Locked On Kings podcast on Friday mornings at 10 o'clock. My plan is to do that this Friday if you want to be a part of that too. So still got more great content coming for you. I know this is the dry and dead part of the off season, and I appreciate those of you who have continued to support the Locked On Kings podcast, continue to listen to the podcast. We've almost made it through, and I just can't express how much I appreciate you. So thank you so much, and hopefully I'll keep more great content coming for you, and we'll start to ramp things up even more as we get closer and closer to training camp. So again, you want to weigh in and share, add to this list of realistic or unrealistic Kings expectations, please do so. And I can't wait to have you join me on the next episode of the Locked On Kings podcast. Until then, my name is Matt George. You've been listening to Locked On Kings, part of the Locked On Podcast Network.